Ever wonder what's the cause behind Michael Jackson's stark skin color change from a young boy to the very light skin of his adulthood? Well, it's actually a condition known as vitiligo. I'm Dr. Mary Alice Mina, and welcome to my channel, The Skin Real, where I give real people real skin information and guidance so that they can make informed decisions about their skin health. Sound good? Let's get into it. This is my weekly recap episode where I break down my key takeaways from my recent interview, this time with a patient and advocate of vitiligo, LaTrese Coyt. And she is someone who has been struggling with vitiligo for decades, since she was in her 20s. And she is also now an advocate for vitiligo to help bring awareness to this condition. And so I do want to break down my key takeaways from that episode. If you want to hear the full episode, be sure to stick around to the end of this short video where I will be linking it. I met LaTrese at a recent women's networking event in Atlanta, and I just found her story of how she was diagnosed and was dealing with vitiligo so empowering that I just thought I have to have her on this show. Vitiligo is not something I've actually discussed on the channel, so I did want to have her come on because a lot of people, they may have heard of it, but a lot of people aren't aware of vitiligo. Now, I referenced Michael Jackson in the beginning of this recording because a lot of people know Michael Jackson and they know how he went from having dark skin to very light skin. And a lot of rumors were swirling, like, how did he change? Did he become a different race? What's going on? And he's probably the most famous example of someone with a severe form of vitiligo, what we would call vitiligo universalis, where pretty much he lost pigment all over his body. And most likely, and possibly, I don't know, I've never treated him personally, but sometimes when people have such widespread vitiligo and maybe just a few patches that haven't depigmented, they'll go ahead and bleach out the rest of their skin just to make it uniform. For most people, they've seen photos of Michael Jackson and they can recognize how his skin did change over his life. But let's just start at the basics. What is vitiligo? So vitiligo is basically an autoimmune condition. That just means it is a condition where your own body, your immune cells are attacking itself. So in vitiligo, your immune cells are attacking the cells that make pigment, telling them to stop making pigment. They stop making pigment. And so you're left with these very white, chalky, milky white patches on your skin. Now, if you have lighter skin, the contrast may not be as noticeable. And I find some people don't even know they have vitiligo. Sometimes I just casually mention it when I see them for something because I notice it and they just think, oh yeah, I've always had that slightly lighter area right there. But as you can imagine, if you have darker skin, the contrast is really, really noticeable. And it can be really psychologically traumatic, not just for the person with vitiligo, but for their family. Because if you all of a sudden are used to identifying with a certain ethnicity group or race and having a certain skin color, and all of a sudden that's gone and you look different from everyone else in your family and your community, that can be really devastating, not just for the patient, but also for family members. And so I love that LaTrese was on to just share her experience dealing with it. Now, a lot of times vitiligo, it has a wide range of severity. Some people may just get a few little patches here and there. They repigment and they don't have any more issues with it. But other people can have a pretty severe form where it's most of the skin on their body. And it can even affect their hair like it did for LaTrese as well. If you have vitiligo, or you're noticing some areas of skin that's lightening, then I would say see a dermatologist first and foremost to make sure it is vitiligo, because sometimes there are other conditions that can look similar, but it's not true vitiligo. And there are some treatments that are possible. Now, with a lot of skin conditions, there is no cure for vitiligo at this time, but we do have treatments, and most of the treatments are aimed at suppressing the immune system, calming down that immune system that's attacking your own cells. We do this a lot with topical steroids. or something called topical calcineurin inhibitors that don't have the side effects of steroids that can thin the skin. In the past several years, we now have these things called JAK inhibitors that we use a lot in people with eczema, and it's a topical formulation that can be used, and studies are also looking at an oral form. And then another treatment that's very effective for vitiligo is narrowband ultraviolet B therapy, narrowband UVB therapy. And it's basically phototherapy where we know that UV radiation from the sun, when we use just a very narrow window for very short amounts of time and very controlled, can actually suppress the immune system and help you repigment. Now, it can be really effective, especially if you've got widespread vitiligo, but it can be cumbersome. It requires multiple trips into your dermatologist every week, or you need to buy a phototherapy unit for your house, and that may not be covered by insurance. And so there are challenges with that as well. So again, there are some treatment options, but unfortunately at this time, there is not a cure. If you are struggling with vitiligo, another reason to see your dermatologist is just to make sure you don't have signs of another autoimmune condition, because sometimes they can go together. You may notice you're getting what's called alopecia areata, where you get these little round patches of hair loss where your body is attacking the hair follicles. The good news with that is it tends to come back for a lot of people. But again, there is sort of this range of severity, just like with vitiligo. You may want to have your thyroid levels checked, especially if you have symptoms of hypothyroidism. So that might be, you may get a blood draw for that. You may get a blood draw to check your fasting glucose levels, because sometimes diabetes can be associated with this, and even some more internal systemic autoimmune conditions as well. So again, important to see your dermatologist. Don't just try to self-treat at home yourself, and they can advise you on whether you need further workup for other autoimmune conditions. Now, LaTrese has such a positive attitude about vitiligo, but it wasn't always like that. And when she developed this in her 20s, which is common, people either develop it in their childhood days or they develop it as sort of 20s to 30s. And different things can bring it out. We don't fully understand. Sometimes stress, sometimes areas under a lot of friction can bring it out, but we don't fully understand. John Hamm is a famous actor who has vitiligo, and there have been reports saying that the stress from filming Mad Men is what sort of triggered his vitiligo to come out as well. And so there are tons of famous people who have it. Winnie Harlow is a beautiful model who has vitiligo, and I love that she is being prominently featured in ad campaigns too, so people can see you can be beautiful with vitiligo. And LaTrese points out that vitiligo, it doesn't hurt her physically, it's not painful, and it's not going to affect her overall lifespan. And so she has really taken to just embracing who she is and just helping spread the word that this is what I have. It's a skin condition. I look different, but I'm still the same me on the inside. And she has elected to not treat it because she didn't like the side effects of some of the treatment options that were out there. And so her approach is just to embrace it and to help spread the word so that people are aware, and maybe that will help to hopefully help raise awareness so that she isn't stared at so much in public, because that certainly does happen. And she mentioned going back to her high school reunion when she had vitiligo and people didn't know who she was. They didn't recognize her because they were used to seeing her with one skin color, and now she was coming back different. But again, as she emphasizes, different doesn't mean bad. Different doesn't mean ugly. Different is okay. She's still beautiful. She's still the same LaTrese on the inside. And she gave some great advice on anyone struggling with vitiligo, and she used the acronym SKIN. The S is for self-appreciation, that first and foremost, we have to love ourselves no matter what we're going through, what we're dealing with. And of course, easier said than done for sure, but to have self-love, self-appreciation for yourself. There is nothing you did to get vitiligo. There's nothing that you could have done to stop it. So just to love yourself and embrace yourself, no matter what condition you're struggling with or going through. The K is for knowledge, and I love this too. Just empower yourself, learn about vitiligo, go online, read about it, make sure you find reputable sources like the Vitiligo Research Foundation or the American Academy of Dermatology. Learn about the condition, see your dermatologist, see someone who is used to seeing people with vitiligo, and discuss different treatment options that you may want to pursue. I is inspire. You are beautiful. Use your condition, whatever it is, to raise awareness for people who may not be aware of it. Because vitiligo, while it's fairly common, it has such a range of presentations that you may not have ever personally met someone with vitiligo. So if you are struggling with vitiligo, you can be an inspiration for those around you to help bring awareness to this condition. And then N was for network. And this is so important. If you are struggling with any skin condition, really any condition, the great thing about the internet and the world today is that we can be so connected with others and that there is a support group out there for you and you have people out there to support you. And we can now increase our reach and our network from just our immediate neighborhood or family. And so seek out a community of people struggling with your condition with vitiligo. Have a support group of people who are going through what you're going through and understand and recognize it, because you may be the first person in your family, the first person in your community to be struggling with vitiligo. And people around you may not be familiar with it. They may be scared. They may be anxious about it. And finding your people that you can connect with, that you can talk about and be real with is so key. So find your network of people. There is National Vitiligo Day. There are national meetings for it. And I'm sure there is most likely a support group or a meeting within your community or nearby in your town. So make sure to check out those resources. Don't feel like you have to suffer alone. Don't be embarrassed. Don't let it define you. Don't let it bring your self-confidence down, but instead let it be an inspiration for others and let them know, hey, this is what I have. I'm still me. This isn't contagious. I don't have an infection or anything that I'm going to give to you. This is just who I am now, and I'm still beautiful. And I love that message that LaTrese is really imparting to people and just letting people know this is what it is and that she's still the same person on the inside, even if she looks different. If you are struggling with vitiligo, I highly encourage you to check out the full episode right here and to check out those resources I mentioned earlier, like the aad.org or the Vitiligo Research Foundation, or find a support group in your community. And I will see you next week.